E equals mc squared. All of us know this. It's taught to us, although it's still theory. Energy, in this case, equals matter and antimatter. This is the subject for this video. We're going to discuss the theory and the very real possibility of life existing both in matter and antimatter. So, let's just do a little review here. What is antimatter? Well, antimatter is the extension of the concept of the antiparticle to matter. Antimatter is composed of antiparticles, i.e., particles with identical mass and spin as those of ordinary particles, but with opposite charge and magnetic properties. They are literally the mirror image of matter. Okay, that seems pretty simple on the surface. Okay, so taking that as the foundation of this program, then everything that exists has an exact opposite. You have a proton, you have an antiproton. Now, it is the theory in science today that antimatter has, well, it basically cancels each other out with matter. When antimatter comes into contact with normal matter, these equals and opposite charges collide to produce an explosion emitting pure radiation. Lay hold to that. Okay, scientists believe that this energy is more powerful than any that can be generated by other propulsion systems. Now, have you seen how we've taken the dynamics now from the theoretical existence of antimatter to where now we are positioning it and looking at it as a potential propulsion system? That changes. So the annihilation theory is this. You have a particle-antiparticle, right? And in between there, you have this vast explosion of energy. Now, that produces what they think are gamma rays. Not sure. And although we can't see gamma rays, we can in fact measure them. All right? So I want to introduce to you Dr. Santilli. Now, he is a theoretical physicist, happens to also have a company called Thunder Industries. Now, this man is a pioneer. He's a free thinker. He doesn't, how shall we say, keep to the norms. This individual is a person who thinks beyond the limitations of humanity. And what he has discovered is quite interesting, because this man has actually discovered what he believes is to be another life form. Now, as we know, it is well established in particle physics laboratories, matter and antimatter particles annihilate at mutual contact by transforming their masses into light. One of the necessary conditions for a consistent quantitative representation of this experimental evidence is that all characteristics of antimatter must be opposite to those of matter. It has also been established that the use of 20th century mathematics for the representation of both matter and antimatter leads to predictable catastrophic inconsistencies, because our math is not up with the knowledge that we are seeing, recording, and discovering. There's a new math. It's called ISODUAL mathematics. It's going to change things. It's going to change things for a lot of us. It's going to change things for the world, in fact. So here again, we have the representation of matter, antimatter. We have the electrons, the protons, the antiprotons, and in this case, we're dealing with hydrogen and anti-hydrogen. Now, this may surprise you to learn that actually we have known the existence of antimatter. It has been rumored that there are certain labs that actually are able to contain antimatter. So there is one particular difference in looking at matter and antimatter. If you look at what they call the atomic weight, and there is the slightest difference. It's heavier, matter is, than antimatter, but only by the most smallest amount. Now, CERN, we've all heard about CERN, right? Well, CERN, do you know what they're down there also doing? They're developing anti-hydrogen. Why? Ask yourself, why? That's a question that needs more discussion. So, what we have here is the theory that there is an exact opposite of you living in an exact opposite anti-universe. And the fact that there is this barrier that supposedly prevents us from ever connecting. Because if we did, if you met your anti-self, well, you basically just blow yourselves out of oblivion. At least that's what we have thought up until now. It may in fact look like that may not in fact be the true story. So consider this for your mind coitus for the day. If there is life, there has to be anti-life. Both exist. One cannot exist without the other. Life, anti-life. Think about it. Now, Thunder Energies, Dr. Santilli, what he discovered is still highly controversial. In fact, in the scientific community, he's considered to be a wacko. But how many wackos have ended up being the masters? Yeah. Philo, the great first century philosopher, was quoted as saying, "There is no space without life." That's a first century man who grasped this concept. And our modern day scientists are just now understanding. So Dr. Santilli has invented what I find the most remarkable thing. These people are incredible. He has invented what is called the ISODUAL telescope. Is an antimatter, new energy applications for hadronic science. This is a new area, a new frontier. What he has done and discovered, if it's proven by others, will absolutely revolutionize our whole science. What is light? Light is nothing more than photons. That's all it is. And we see light in the visible white light spectrum. We only see one aspect of this spectrum that basically humans only see a very, 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 very small, minute particle part. Light, anti-light. Think about this. Light has properties, anti-light has properties. Darkness, by the way, is not anti-light. Get that into your consciousness. Darkness is still light. Remember, if those who believe the Bible, in the beginning was darkness. Light came afterwards. So it shows that there is a principle to darkness that we have not even fully comprehended yet. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is something more than to your reality. Anti-light carries negative energy. A new form of light with a negative index of refraction, but with positive energy. This is groundbreaking. And the years to come, as the physicists begin to experiment more and more with this, we're going to develop new applications for healing. We're going to develop new applications for travel. We're going to develop new applications for science that will revolutionize our complete existence. This is the Santilli ISODUAL telescope. It is using what we would call, on one side on the left, the Galilean telescope. I have a Galilean telescope. If you have one, you do too. On the right, we have the Santilli telescope. Now, this is the difference between the two. In detecting the whole subject of antimatter, if antimatter exists, and that means there has to be another universe, another anti-universe. Under these conditions, the detection of antimatter galaxies with a pair of the Galileo and the Santilli telescopes can be made according to the following rules. You can actually go to their website and find more of the technical acts, but I'm just going to lay them out here. 1, all alignments in the night sky are done with the Galileo telescope, which is generally equipped with an eyepiece. All images are taken from equal digital or film cameras in both the Galileo and the Santilli telescopes as shown in figure 3, and I'll show you those. Whether digital or film, the images from the two telescopes are subjected to the same magnification until faint images become detectable over the background. 4, digital cameras are sufficient for initial scans of the night sky, although much more detailed views can be obtained via a film camera, and images focused by the Santilli telescopes are considered valid if and only if they do not exist in the images from the Galileo telescope under the same magnification. So now we have the parameters of how this scientist has begun to lay out what he has discovered. So the key difference in here is that you're dealing with a convex lens to a concave lens. Now, you would think that this would be something that Galileo may have even thought about. You would have certainly thought over the hundreds of years since the invention of the telescope that someone might have come in and said, well, let's take a look at and see what happens with concave lens. Now, granted, they didn't have the equipment that gets into the precision and the precise, detail, but still, well, he did. Consequently, the focusing of images of matter light require convex lenses as occurring in the Galileo telescopes, while the focusing of images of antimatter light require concave lenses as occurring in the Santilli telescopes. So this is probably what most of us have, or variations thereof. So you can see the difference by just the convexness of a lens. Now, since antimatter galaxies cannot exist in our galactic environment and can only exist far away, their images are faint. Consequently, the detection of their images are suggested to be done with long camera exposures, such as exposures for 15 seconds. This long exposure generates streaks in the digital cameras that, as such, can be clearly distinguished from the background as well as from the impurities or imperfections of the cameras, since said impurities and imperfections remain stationary. The tracking of antimatter galaxies with the Santilli telescope is discouraged at the moment. This is due to the fact that in case of tracking, antimatter galaxies will produce small stationary dots in the camera that as such cannot be distinguished with certainty from camera impurities or anomalies. Matter-antimatter annihilation also requires that antimatter light must have energy opposite that of matter light, as predicted by P.A.M. Derrick in 1932 and verified by R.M. Santilli in his decades of research on antimatter. This is a fascinating area of science. It is no doubt going to change everything for us. It's going to change how, I'll guarantee you this, it will begin to change our views on science, our views on religion, our views on life itself. Yes, life itself. So this is the image that Dr. Santilli is talking about. Now, he claims that this is an image of matter, antimatter. Yeah, kind of amazing, isn't it? So we understand how light refracts different mediums, right? You can have space, atmosphere, water, density, etc. We understand these things. But one of the things that we are starting to learn now is the principles of antimatter light. And this is revolutionary. The fact that even antimatter light can be detected is amazing, since matter and antimatter annihilate at contact into light. Now, could it be that this is another byproduct of a light that we have not yet learned to detect? As a condition for its existence at the classical microscopic level, antimatter must have all characteristics opposite to those of matter. For instance, matter light has a positive index of refraction, while, as a condition for its existence, antimatter light must have a negative index of refraction. And so here you can see the matter and the antimatter atoms, how they act. So we've discovered and known for some time that there is this in between the matter and the antimatter. That's what we have been trying to discover. And again, when you talk about light, breaking down light to its very simplest components, even as photons now show that there could be potentially a whole new source of light that we have not even began to comprehend fully. And as we begin to adjust this, as other scientists begin to explore what Dr. Santilli has come up with, and as they begin to build upon it, as they begin to perfect upon it, I dare say within the next 2 or 3 decades, we're going to see a whole new science. We're going to see a whole new physics derived from this science. We're going to understand how the negative indexes of refraction, how they begin to get modified, how they can begin to change, and how once we begin to learn how they change, then we can begin to observe their structures. Once we observe their structures, we'll begin to observe how it works. We'll get there. We'll use Snell's law of refraction. We'll begin to modify those principles, those theories, those foundations of science that we have built ourselves upon, and we will begin to learn a new way of looking at ourselves, our environment, our very creation itself. Light is more than just light. There is a light humans know nothing about. Now, Dr. Santilli makes the claim that he has, in fact, recorded what he calls ITEs, and there's ITEs 1 and ITE 2s. These are invisible terrestrial entities, life forms. Now, his experiment took place in 2015, September 5, in Tampa Bay, at a hotel in which they were pointing the very first prototype of his ISODUAL telescope. Now, these are the images that he claims are, in fact, ETs. Now, to you and I, it just looks to me to be, what would be consistent with a time delay of light, a movement of a light. But apparently not, because the way that he went about this and got this None of us could have ever done it. And so here we see a compilation of these ITEs, invisible terrestrial entities. They move light. Light, apparently in an energy form, as you can see, actually shows waves. So this is what they call an ITE2, sentient, intelligent, and apparently spying on us. Fascinating, isn't it? Who would have thought? Now, when you look at this, you say, well, it seems awfully small. But remember, it's the small things that kill you. Here we have a series of photos in which, through different filters, contrast, gamma, exposures, they say this is alive. It says that it knows about us. Apparently, we've just found out about them. But oddly enough, since this discovery of 2015, strange things have begun to show up around the world. It would appear that something has shifted, something has changed. Have we come into a new era of understanding, of enlightenment? What is a life form? Ask yourself. We are so critical. We judge everything by our perceptions and our basis of reality. And in reality, we know very little. You see this creature? Looks almost alien, doesn't it? You see that creature? Actually, there's two. You see this creature? Folks, this is another picture of an ITE2. Here's another one. It's been filmed as well when people sleep and when people die. Are these the angels? Are these your demons? Is this your God? Is this real or is this fake? That's a life form down on the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the oceans on Earth. This is Mr. Santilli, Dr. Santilli's ITE2. You tell me. Which is real, which is not? How can you tell? This was captured off of one of the satellites. Are we seeing a different type of life form? Now we're beginning to capture things in the clouds that we haven't been able to capture before. Remember, when you see light, there has to be anti-light. It has to be there. Otherwise, you do not have light. These are the creatures of the deep on Gaia, Earth. This is Ebola. Yes, sentient life forms. Now, if we can see these and begin to detect similarities between anti-entities and us, wonder what else our telescopes are picking up. Could it be that we have been seeing in space that even our scientists haven't even begun to comprehend or understand about antimatter, anti-life, existence of a species, an intelligence that has ascended to the point that they have been able now to exist in both antimatter, matter, life, anti-life? Are we beginning to understand now that there is a propulsion system far beyond our understanding that absolutely is so abundant it never runs out? Is it true that we could be very well seeing the manifestations of other planetary, other suns, other stars in our own solar system? How do we know what is and what isn't of this reality, of this plane? So many things we think we know. Oh, we try to come up with a fancy science that explains that, well, this is nothing more than what we call a magnetic cavity. Really? And how sure are you of that science? Only a fool makes an absolute statement, because we don't know anything. In fact, what we're discovering here is going to change our views on every religion in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose the theory, the hypothesis as reality, that there is with us now and has been before us anti-light beings. Some call them angels, some call them God, some call them demons. Fact is, we don't know. But isn't it odd that when we talk about light, that Lucifer is the only deity proclaimed to be the light bearer, the bringer of knowledge, the caretaker of the light? It apparently is very prominent in Christianity. Most Christians don't know this, but apparently Christianity is based upon the worship of Lucifer as the light being. I didn't say it. I didn't write it. But it does seem that is the case. Lucifer, the light bearer. Is he a being that is actually a being that can exist both in anti-life and life? Why? Why is he talked about as the light bearer? And the myths that so many people got in their heads, it just, you just sometimes you just go, okay, that's fine. Who are the light bearers? Who are the anti-light beings? How would we know? How would you know? And I'll end it with this. Not all life, not all light is good.